I know in some of the videos we're talking about separating the pelvis and rib cage from the lead shoulder.
Absolutely. Okay.
Talk us through that
So
one.
the first thing, let's go into firstly, let's talk about like why do people do this? Firstly, like why do people actually do this? So if we look at it, when amateur golfers do this, the first thing that they do is either A, they never let the arms and the club stop at the top. So they don't even have time to try and get the pelvis and the rib cage and the shoulders separated. Or number two, what they do is they get up here to the top and everything stops and they just wait for it and then everything starts to go together. So there's not any flow inside of what they're moving and what their motion is doing. Once you understand what type of player you are, then we kind of understand how we can combat it and how we can go about fixing it. So like one of the biggest feels that I would say that I like using firstly is just understanding how do you simply move the pelvis before you move the rib cage, and then how do you move the rib cage before the shoulders, and vice versa, so that we're actually working on the sequence of it.
Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about the hanger training aid. I absolutely love this. I firmly believe that this is good for every single golfer. This hanger here creates and controls what I think is the most important part of the swing, which is the wrist angle. It snaps right on. It takes me probably 30 seconds to put on. I can put it right in my golf bag, and best of all is you can hit balls with it. You can actually hit balls with it. So I love this hanger training aids. Look at when I do that well, how that sits on my forearm. Now watch when I cut my wrist, how that comes off. Immediate feedback for where my wrist angle is at. No one that can have too flat of a left wrist. One of the few things that all good ball strikers have, we're trying to have. Flat left wrist, right? Super easy to use, incredible immediate feedback with the coupon code GOGORNOGolf.com. You're gonna absolutely love it. We'll put all the details down in the description down below. All right guys, welcome back. In today's video, we're gonna talk about why amateurs can't swing like the pros. And the main reason we're gonna talk about in today's video is that all important transition where the professional golfer or the good ball striker is able to create separation, whereas the higher handicap player isn't able to. We're gonna explain why that's important, how to do that, some drills and feels, and if you're not able to do it as much, some workarounds. Obviously, not out here by myself, Mr. Trevor Salzman, back for more videos.
Good to see you, man.
Appreciate you. If you didn't see our videos with Trevor, we did some earlier this spring. We'll link one of those at the end of this video. We'll also put Trevor's info in the description down below. If you want to go do in-person lessons with Trevor, online lessons, great golf coach down here in South Florida. We'll put that down below. So, Trevor, I was watching some of your videos, right, and that sort of led us to, hey, let's do a little bit more in detail on this transition, how we create separation. So,
100%.
First things first, before we go through the feels, right? Would you agree that in general, based on our coaching and what we see, that the professional golfer or a player who hits the ball better is able to create more separation of the pelvis and rib cage from the torso?
Absolutely.
Yeah, versus the higher handicap.
100%. It's like it's the segments of the spine that we have. What I see out of like amateur golfers, higher handicaps, etc., what we see out of them is that as they get up to the top of their golf swing, they get the shoulders, the rib cage, the pelvis, they get this all moving the same direction at the same time, which kind of turns into a balance loss. And on top of that, it gets the golf club to pitch the direction that we don't want to see that. When we start looking at pros, like take a Jon Rahm, for example, who's on fire right now on the PGA Tour. You look at that guy's got the club working up this direction. And before this is even done moving upward, he's already got separation from the pelvis. Then he follows it with the rib cage, and then that's where lastly he gets to put the gas on with the chest, shoulders, arms, and the golf club. Hence to why Jon Rahm hits it as far as what he does. So it's a distance thing as well. It's a pretty cool way of looking at it. And
one of the things Trevor and I were talking beforehand was like, hey, why do you want to do this separation? Like, what does that actually give you? And it's really the same thing you would do as if you look at a really good ball striker versus, let's say, a higher handicap, someone who shoots 90 or 100. What does the really good ball striker do better? They hit it more solid, they hit the ball farther, and in general, they hit it straighter.
They hit a lot straighter.
And a lot of them will have like a little tight draw on a lot of their shots.
Yep.
The higher handicap golfer, the 90, 100, etc., doesn't hit it as solid, they hit it shorter, and they tend to slice more to the right.
100%.
So let's talk through some feels, and then like, okay, how does the separation actually lead to some of that good stuff? I know in some of the videos we're talking about separating the pelvis and rib cage from the lead shoulder.
Absolutely.
Okay. Talk us through that
so
one?
The first thing, let's go into firstly, let's talk about like why do people do this? Firstly, like why do people actually do this? So if we look at it, when amateur golfers do this, the first thing that they do is either A, they never let the arms and the club stop at the top. So they don't even have time to try and get the pelvis and the rib cage and the shoulders separated. Or number two, what they do is they get up here to the top and everything stops and they just wait for it, and then everything starts to go together. So there's not any flow inside of what they're moving and what their motion is doing. Once you understand what type of player you are, then we kind of understand how we can combat it and how we can go about fixing it. So like one of the biggest feels that I would say that I like using firstly is just understanding how do you simply move the pelvis before you move the rib cage, and then how do you move the rib cage before the shoulders, vice versa, so that we're actually working on the sequence of it. So like what I've got right here is I've got an antenna. So I'm going to throw this antenna inside of my belt loop here, okay, so that we can see this from a relationship standpoint. So if I put this right here, so if I'm going towards this camera right here, the first thing that I would say is like, I might even start just right here at setup and say, can I move the pelvis without my shoulder moving? So that would be me moving the pelvis. Now I'm going to move the rib cage, and you can see I haven't done anything with my shoulder yet, but I've gotten this well past probably 40, 45 degrees open right there. And that's going to be our sequential movement that we want to start early from the top of our golf swing, assuming that our mobility allows that to happen, assuming we're in balance and assuming we have the mobility to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Okay? So like even this, a lot of players that I'll coach, what I'll have them do is I'll have them run through this at really slow speeds initially. One, so that we can connect with it neurologically, because what I see too many of us out here doing is we want to go Mach 10 and we just turn and we actually have no idea what just happened with my video, but it happens so fast that we don't actually have the time to neurologically connect with what it is that we did. So a lot of the players that I coach, what I'll have them do is I'll say, all right, we're going to make a swing. We're going to go up to the top, and I'm going to go pelvis first, rib cage next, and then I'm just going to bring the club very lightly down to the golf ball. So while I'm doing this, I cannot stress this enough, I'm doing this as tension-free as I can humanly do it. Because if I get up here and I'm super tight when I do this, if I'm up here and I'm death gripping this, like I'm white-knuckled here, and I go pelvis, and then I go rib cage, you can see where's this club coming from.
Yeah, way too over.
Okay, because my wrists are too tight to allow the club to actually stay behind me to where it benefits us to keep it from the inside, where we create speed, and it also helps us out with contact, start line, etc. So I always like players to firstly, let's learn what this feels like. Before we ever try and do it, let's learn what it feels like initially. So I always I'll go up to the top, freeze it, pelvis, rib cage, and then I'm just gonna feel what it's like to hit the golf ball down here at impact. And I'm actually doing this very relaxed while I'm doing it. It takes time to learn how to relax doing it, but I can't stress that skill set enough, because then when we start moving it into either a slower movement, cadence at first, that's what gives us the ability to start doing this eventually at speed. But I can't stress the movement pattern enough right there. Go slow before you go fast.
Let me ask you a couple questions. So one of the pieces I know from a feel perspective, we said separate the pelvis, then rib cage, and really separating the pelvis and rib cage from the shoulder as we start down. And in addition to that, or as you are doing that, you want to be feeling some right side bend, right? Some right side crunch.
Absolutely. So what we're trading immensely is, like, obviously we've got lead side bend up here to the top. And what we mean by lead side bend is this right here, my pelvis and my front shoulder, my lead shoulder, they're pretty close together right here. So I've got a little bit of this crunch right here in my side. Now, as I start to separate that, I'm trading that to where now I've got side bend here on my trail side. If I didn't have this side bend, this is the contact thing and also the path thing for us. If I didn't have side bend, if I kept this long and I just rotated, where am I gonna be? So I need this side bend to be in, this right side crunch, as my left rib cage and oblique is lengthening, in order for me to stay down here in this hitting area where the golf ball is at.
Yeah, okay.
Hugely important, and really all it is, it's just bending this direction and bending that direction while the pelvis is staying neutral. The big thing I would really make sure when you're working on, you're trying this is not side bend. This right here is not side bend. That would be more secondary tilt. That's just tilting the pelvis and taking your tailbone and moving in an opposite direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Let me hop in there for a sec, and I want to just go through some of the feels, and then just want to say, hey, if someone's watching and they're like, hey, Eric, Trevor, I get those things. I don't feel like I'm going to be able to move that way.
Yep.
What else could I do? We'll talk to that in a minute.
For sure.
So if I'm just trying to learn this, I like that we started with just from a setup position. You said separate. I'm going to imagine I have that stick in there. Separate my pelvis from my rib cage, and then separate my rib cage from my shoulder.
Exactly.
So it's like that's kind of like initial test number one, right? Or initial feel number one.
For sure.
Pelvis, rib cage, and my shoulder staying here the whole way.
And you'll see now you've got side bend in just by you turning that. So you didn't even have to think about that. That came very naturally right there.
Yeah, 100%. So it definitely feels when I'm doing that. My left hip's working around, my rib cage is working around. I'm keeping that shoulder almost like it's like cemented in there just for a second.
Exactly.
And I definitely feel that crunch.
Yep.
Like you said, without me having to feel that. So if I can feel what that is first, and obviously if I was looking at like a mirror or video or something, that would give me nice feedback. And then I'm slowly, would I slowly kind of, hey, can I do that with a full swing right away?
Yeah, you could do it with a full swing. You could even do it with a half swing. You could do it with a 3/4 swing.
Okay.
What I would recommend is doing it at a speed that you can really you can connect with what's going on. Like that pace that you're doing right there, now you actually have awareness to what's moving firstly.
Yeah,
like that's super important. Now, if you show the viewers, this is a cool way of doing this real quick. So if you show them that impact, like where you started at setup right here, take your right hand, put it on your left shoulder. So now you have awareness of where this is. So you're gonna hold your left shoulder there as you move the pelvis initially.
Okay.
And then that's what's then you can really start to feel that left oblique lengthen right there.
So I'm not letting that go.
That's
way
exactly,
over there.
that's where you'll start to develop more of this natural side bend in here. And that's keeping the eyes more on center.
And that obviously for me, because this is something I need to improve upon, that's something that feels different, physically doable. I'm certainly not the most like flexible or mobile person in the world by any means. I'm not, 100 years old, but I'm not the most mobile person in the world. And that certainly feels different, but doable. I like the holding of the shoulder there. So let me go ahead and feel that here. Pelvis, ribcage, shoulder stays there.
Bingo.
Okay, just do like clip a little slow one out there.
Yeah, we'll do like a little slow one that you hit about 100 yards or so.
Pelvis, ribcage, shoulder stays in.
Beautiful. And so that right there is like, that's the first step I would say in learning how to do that.
Now, let's say we're doing this and we said, hey, when we're able to create the separation, that obviously is going to give us speed. It's sort of like just as a simple matter, there's something coiled and then uncoils. We're not looking to coil on the way back, but we want some of that to happen in transition.
Exactly, yep. You're torquing the spine right there.
And that's going to create the speed. There's a lot of reasons why that's going to create solidness of contact we don't need to get all into. But adding that right side bend piece to it too helps enable that club to work from inside, as you demonstrated, versus if I just keep going forward with my head and shoulder too far over.
That right there is the biggest misconception I see when players start learning how to rotate, is they just sit here and they just rotate everything. They rotate everything.
And with that in mind, because I think this goes together, let's say someone's like, hey, maybe I'm a little bit older, I don't feel like I can move as well. I don't think I'm gonna be able to separate. What are the one or two pieces we can give them? It's like, hey, it's okay. Like, you don't have to create that separation to play golf. What we're saying is that would be optimal. The closer we can get to that, the better.
Absolutely.
But it's not, one or the other. You can, there's different ways to do it. So let's say they couldn't create that separation. What are like the one or two keys they could do to still hit the ball, successfully?
Okay, so the two things that I would say, if I jump back in there real quick, the two things that we have to make sure that we have, I think we would all agree on this, is we have to have pressure moving to the forward foot, okay? You're not going to hit great shots hanging out here on your trail side right there. So one, you're gonna have pressure that is moving this direction. Not everybody's gonna be able to rotate their pelvis to where they can get that open. But what we still have the ability to do as players right here is we can still move pressure forward, we can still have our eyes on center, and what we can do, so like even if a player doesn't have a lot of rotation here in the back, he can get pressure forward, which helps get the shaft a little bit more behind, and then from here we can lengthen the left oblique right here. So we can still create side bend.
Okay.
We just need to have a reference to make sure that we're staying on center doing that, so that it's not getting in front and moving this direction to where it gets too far behind us or we don't get forward.
And that side bend, Trevor, that's going to help keep the club from inside, the shallowing?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that side bend, see, like if I just go here, even if I don't have a full turn, so like I'm only turned probably 75 degrees right here. Okay. When I start to side bend, we can see this golf club still staying from the inside. Now from here, all I'm going to have to match this up with is just a little bit of chest rotation. I'm just going to have to match that up with a little bit of rotation from the chest.
That's so good, dude. I'm glad you put that together. So if they're not able to create, if you're not able to create as much hip or pelvis and rib cage rotation, you can still hit the ball solid, hit it reasonably far. If we get the pressure forward,
yes,
we've got the side bend, and we have just a little bit, even if it is kind of more of one unit, the chest has to keep rotating for that low point to move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a little better club face control.
Absolutely. So like you could take a double alignment stick and you could put it on your head right here to where,
if I was like one of
if
these?
Eric goes right there, yep.
Yep.
So I would go here so I can still get pressure forward. I can feel my front side is lengthening right here, and as soon as that lengthens, this starts to bend. Now all I've got to sync this up with is just a little bit of chest rotation right there.
That was really, really well put together. So what optimal and why amateurs aren't able to hit like the pros is really those body motions. So if the highest handicap player's over here and the professionals over here, what we're saying is the better you can get at those motions, the closer you're going to get to that better ball striking.
Absolutely.
The feels are the pelvis and the rib cage separating from the shoulder and with a little bit of right side bend. Now, if you're not able to create that amount of rotation there, you still can hit it good, make sure the pressure goes forward, lead side lengthens, trail side crunches, a little bit of chest rotation. I just wanted to summarize that all what we just did.
Absolutely.
There. Appreciate you coming out.
For sure, my man.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Again, Trevor's info is going to be down below if you want to go see him in person, online lessons. If not, let's do a little bit more in the next video.
Awesome.
All right, cool. Thanks guys for watching.